Welcome back to Incremental, the continuous improvement podcast. This is our practice edition where we look at improvements we made during the week and talk about them in terms of lean. I was sort of thinking about maybe changing that intro a little bit.
Yeah.
To be more about like, I don't know, that sort of feels like we're going to analyze this and break this down instead of like sharing where we're at.
Mm.
Like, I feel like the really interesting part, hopefully, is just, like, again, back to the, like, proximal learning thing of being like, what is a small company that's also trying to implement lean is struggling with?
Yeah.
Rather than just like, oh, we reduced wasted motion this week.
Huzzah.
Nice. High five, man. I don't know. Anyway, just a thought.
Yeah.
But, quote?
The first 90% of the code accounts for the first 90% of the development time. The remaining 10% of the code accounts for the other 90% of the development time.
Too real.
It is. I have a friend who was a programmer. He's retired now. And some years back, we were talking about how projects always take longer than you expect. And he said that when they would get a project timeline estimate, he would, maybe I've said this before, I think he said he would multiply by 3 and then change to the next larger unit. And it tended to be...
follow that second part.
So like if they said it was going to be 2 days, he would go to 6 weeks. And he said...
So he would go to triple that, so 6 days, and then go up to the next.
Up a unit.
Whoa.
And he said he found it to be fairly accurate. He'd been...
That's really depressing.
Programming his entire career.
So it's like, hey, I'll get that to you tomorrow, and it will be 3 weeks.
I think this was maybe more for like a project as a whole.
Okay.
So if like they're going to like roll out a new product.
And it's like, we're going to do that in a month.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, so a month would be 3 years? That doesn't feel quite right.
It doesn't feel quite right.
3 quarters maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
Because day to week would be a factor of 7.
Mm-hmm.
Month to year is only is a factor of 12.
Yeah. It was a loose.
Okay.
It was
still,
thing, but
yeah.
The point stands that this quote is maybe accurate.
It's also funny. Yeah. For sure. And I think, well, a couple things I think about. One is if you can design your projects such that you get benefit from them along the way,
mm-hmm.
they don't need to reach completion to start benefiting from or testing. I feel like you can get a lot of the gains without the other 90% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like the different, I guess this is like Pareto's principle, right?
Yeah.
80-20.
Yeah.
Classic 80-20.
Which we have now retermed 90-90.
90-90. Yeah, I think I think it can be beneficial. Like they talk about one of the questions in Toyota Coda is like, when will we be able to learn from this project?
Yeah.
Like, when are we going to be able to go see results?
Yeah.
And if it's too long, it's like, no. Like,
right.
I want, right. Like if it's like, okay, yeah, we'll have this set up and implemented in 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I think it begs the question of like, what could we learn by the end of the day?
Yeah.
And that starts to avoid the issue of spending that other 90%, the second 90% of the time.
It does. Also designing a system to
moving
run
in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
I was gonna say.
Or also like if you design your stuff to work at 80%, and you never try necessarily to it, you just like are always improving that 80%.
Yeah.
Kind of saying the same thing.
Yeah.
But classic, like don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
100%.
With code, it's like a little different because buggy code just makes everyone's life terrible. But
yeah. That said, like we're dealing with this currently. We are interested in moving to a digital database for Kanban.
Mm-hmm.
And Sam is kind of heading up some of the research part of it.
Yeah. Can I ask what the motivation was?
Motivation is a fewfold. One, it feels very inefficient I feel like we've gained a lot by just writing Kanban with Sharpies.
Yeah.
That's been really big, and I don't think we would have started if we had tried to start in a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Sorry, in a like database.
Sure. Yeah.
But at this point, we can get a lot of benefit from... We are getting a lot of benefit from Kanban that have like QR codes that take you directly to the product online.
Yeah.
When one of those gets damaged, we now need to go spend... Basically, it takes us, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, probably 10 minutes to make a new one. Because it's like, okay, now we need to go find the link again. Like nothing's documented except on the card.
So are you talking about having a database reference, but still having physical cards so that like when something gets damaged,
exactly.
Okay,
You just print it off. The other thing is when we want to make a change to tweak our Kanban in the shop, like, what if we, instead of circulating one Kanban of 32, quantity 32, what if we did 4 Kanban, quantity 8?
Yeah.
Running that experiment is sort of time consuming. And then if we decided to pull the trigger on that, it would be very time consuming because you're doing... to make 4 of each Kanban, and we have a bunch of different colors and a bunch of parts, and you know, it would just take a really long time. And then lastly, there's some functionality around like RFQs and email that we haven't found a good option for. And the second you start integrating more advanced stuff into your Kanban, you know, I can't draw a barcode. I can't draw a QR code. And so we're starting, like, we're back and forth to the computer anyway. Print, sticking stickers on paper. Like, it becomes a little too much of an arts and crafts project. So, and then also, like, getting data, for example, and I've seen this done in a physical card, like at the back, something I saw, I think it was the Closet Doctor on YouTube. They write when they order a card on the back of the card, and then when they receive the item, they write on the back when it was received. And so you sort of have this log on the back of like, to get a sense of lead times. Right now, we don't have a method of like, issued a PO, did we receive the thing? Yeah. We don't have anything. So like a lot of that stuff can start to happen in the back end without, I don't know, without adding a lot of complexity, maybe? Big question mark? Yeah. Anyway, so I think it's been challenging to maintain a very narrow scope of what we're trying to achieve as a first step. Back to the quote, right? We're trying to come up with like what's a pretty low effort thing where we can see like, is this even a direction? Yeah. Can we make 5 of our Kanban in this spreadsheet, print from the spreadsheet successfully, add new products to the spreadsheet or to the database successfully? Yeah.
One thing, I'm not sure if this would be a direction for you, but one thing that I've, in my job management system, because it was very tempting to try and have, and I probably will eventually go this direction, but it was very tempting right off the bat to try and like print everything right out of our system for a job. And one thing I've found to be very beneficial is to just print templates that can be hand filled in. And it seems like you could probably pretty quickly systematize, like if you had 2 printers, one that printed your card, one that printed QR stickers, and you just fill in, or like maybe some of the stuff is auto-filled, but making it so that if you need to make changes, like you're not having to fill out everything, but the things that need to be edited are hand edited, are easily edited, and you just can print the base cards off like very fast.
Interesting.
As maybe an intermediate before you get everything ironed out, or something in that concept, like conceptually similar, maybe not exactly that.
Yeah, something I've been thinking about as it relates to sort of like that digital physical divide. Yeah. I am hoping we can have QR codes on I feel like every document in the shop, and maybe there's a way to do this on like Google Docs or whatever, but just like everything in the footer should automatically have a QR code that brings you back to the file. Because then it would be like, oh, we need to make this edit, and it would, I'm just gonna do this by hand on the machine, on the paper.
Makes me realize we should start integrating QR codes for our jobs. Right now we have job numbers. Can still be easy for people to search incorrectly, for a part number instead of a job number.
Something.
And if it was scannable to go to the right job. that would like take all of that out of there.
Yeah. I feel like.
Do you have scanners? We barely use QR codes. Are there scanners you can use with a desktop?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're pretty cheap.
Cool.
Don't buy the cheap ones on Amazon. You can buy one for like $20.
Yeah.
Or you can buy one for like $120. Or you can buy the $120 ones on eBay for $20. It's kind of weird. The crappy ones are crappy. They're hard. Like you'll stand there trying to like get it to scan. So I wouldn't recommend it.
Interesting.
But yeah, they work quite well. And you can set them up. You configure them to like do different things. Like, do you want to scan like 1D, like a barcode, and 2D? Do you want it? There's different like formats and languages and stuff, and you can scan it to add like an enter at the end, like an enter command at the end, or not, or read special characters or not. And anyway,
interesting.
Yeah, they're fun. Yes, but if anyone knows, 2 questions for the audience for me. One is, we're looking at Coda, which is, I think, also a relational database, much like Airtable, and we're also looking at FileMaker. Mm-hmm. Those are kind of the 3. Curious if anyone has ideas.
Airtable's the 3rd?
Yeah.
Okay.
Airtable, Coda, and FileMaker.
Isn't there also like, I don't know a lot about it, but like app sheets, is that a thing that people use?
Yeah, so that I got served an ad for app sheets, and I was like, I need to look at that. I don't know what to like. This is one of those tough ones because you're going to invest a lot of time in one, and then making the change.
The inertia is
a lot of inertia,
large,
and I feel like you have to get pretty deep to discover it's missing one key functionality that would really take it to the next level, and then you're like, looking mournfully at the other one you didn't pick that does do that thing that you didn't know to ask about.
I will say to anybody out there, Airtable is good for many, many things. It is not good for scheduling. If you want to schedule in units less than 1 day.
Gotcha.
Which I do.
Womp womp.
Womp womp.
You can't treat a day as an hour? Or do they just don't do like a calendar? Like what if...
I haven't personally dove into it heavily.
Gotcha.
Someone has on my behalf and was just kind of like, did they really not do this?
Weird.
Yeah.
That was question 1. Oh, the other question was, just putting like this has to be easy. Adding a QR code or something, like a self-referencing QR code, like the share file. Like you can copy and...
Airtable does that natively.
Okay.
Like you can tie a QR to a specific record.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, that must be a thing.
In Quora?
It's called Coda, but I was thinking
Quora,
in
Coda.
Google.
Right, Quora's that
Google
website.
Docs. Oh, yeah. Like Google Docs. So like we're going to do our SOPs, or we are doing our SOPs, as many as they exist in Google Slides. And so it'd be nice to be able to jump right back to there.
Yep.
Without, like, I can obviously manually do it, but if we could just like make it default where every sheet in the shop has a QR code that brings you right back to the digital file.
Yeah.
I feel like it would really diminish that digital physical divide where it's like, do I make this edit with a Sharpie, and then eventually once it gets messy enough we go back and rectify it? Like, to that one single source of truth, I feel like it gets you a step closer to reducing the friction enough where you just jump in and make edits. Anyway,
should we talk about some things that
let's
we
talk
did?
about things.
I was mentioning before we started recording that I feel like being really busy can push you 2 directions.
Yeah.
And so often it pushes you in the like, I'm not going to improve anything. I just have to like put my head down and get through this. And this last week, I found that it did the opposite, where I was like, I cannot make this mistake one more time. I'm going to improve this now.
Interesting. That's awesome. Yeah, I saw you have a pretty robust set of improvements. Do you think part of that has to do with like what you've read about? Like, do you think your tolerance for crap, like bad systems, is lower now? Or do you think it's just like depends on the task? I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. You're just like, I know I have to do this 100 times before midnight. Yeah. Like I just cannot do it the stupid way.
I think it's a mix. I think also, like, as I was mentioning last episode, like the work mix has changed a bit. I'm doing less setups, and we have been very busy the last several weeks, and I was just like making so many mistakes in setup sheets.
Gotcha.
And also I've been gone quite a bit, and so I was having to prep things to be set up and run when I wasn't there.
And then
and so there was a couple things where like, oh, I have to do this because the chance of me editing this code perfectly the first time is low. So I have to actually make the real fix that I've been avoiding for a year.
And what is that fix?
Well, I guess that goes into my straight into my first improvement, which was I added coolant cancel codes and an A-axis 0 return to my tool break detect program.
I can understand the need for the second one. Why is the first one critical, the coolant cancel?
So it wasn't critical until we started running a new tool, a new end mill with coolant through.
Okay.
And it's a large hole, and it moves a lot of fluid, and it e-stopped the tool break detector when it got over it because it pushed it down so hard.
Wow. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So it's been an annoyance to me for a long time that like when it goes and touches, like the coolant's still on.
Yeah.
Just because I was being OCD and it just made me twitch a little bit. So this is embarrassing. So for the past like a year, every time I put in a tool break detect, I put in an M9 right before it.
Okay.
Just so that I can feel good about myself.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a real necessity until yesterday.
Got it.
And I'd done some drills in the past and it didn't push them down. It didn't push it down hard enough.
And you're doing
coolant through drills, I should say.
And you're doing these as like this is pretty in the weeds, but manual pass through?
No, I hard coded them into the 5000 tool break detect program.
Gotcha. So you just had to go back in there and edit that program.
Yeah.
And
it was literally 2 lines.
I'm sure, yeah.
Or 3 lines, I guess. But
interesting.
It was very simple. Been meaning to do it for a long time. The important thing is the A-axis return because that can cause a crash. So now anytime it goes to a tool break detect, it returns the A-axis to G5030. So like the machine 0 home for A.
Nice.
Which is the loading position. It's like the standard position. So unless you had something real crazy, I can't foresee any situation where you'd be able to tool break detect in a different position, but not in that position.
Right. I'm sure you could construct a situation. Yeah.
I could create a situation, but
like a really tall part that you have to tip over to 90 to like traverse across over it, but that would be kind of horrifying.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that was my first improvement and have not populated it to all the machines yet. I did it on one. It's on another one as of this morning. And then I'm going to put it on the third one once we stop the part that we're running today.
That is something I struggle with a lot, are improvements that need to happen across a lot of things. And I don't know how to track it. Because you almost want a list of those. Like I have a bunch of production code that I run day in, day out. And then it'll be something like we were getting a bunch of defects where the stock wasn't in the right position from the spindle gripper.
Yeah.
So we would get like, 1 in 100. And then for some reason it started being like 1 in 40 and then like 2 in 40. And I was like, all right, yeah, gonna fix this. So basically now the gripper drops off the material, it comes down a bit and just nudges it back to center.
Yeah.
So we know it's in the center, and that fixed the problem. And now that's on one of our programs. We have an identical part that doesn't have it. And then it took me like a bunch of weeks to move it over to that one. And then we had 2 other programs because it adds like, I don't know, half a second.
This is probably a place where you kind of opposite from me, where I want to have like, well, I mean, it's sort of the same. I would, when it comes to gripper stuff, I think we had this discussion on the podcast.
I was just thinking about this.
Yeah, I want to have a universal program.
Yeah.
But this could also be an argument for using discrete subprograms for you that are universal, and they're parameterized, and you're like, okay, I'm just going to edit the nudge that goes across all machines or that goes across all programs. They all call the same nudge sub-program that moves the stock over.
Node sub-program. That's interesting. Yeah,
it could go either way, but obviously it would have to be parameterized so that you could edit the specifics in the master program. But I don't know, because your stuff is also similar, I could see that working well for you.
Yeah, I can think of, yes. I was just meditating on the concept of universal gripper programs on the way over. I think the first step I'm going to take is writing a program that allows you to parameterize your program calls, which we've talked about, and it's so simple, and I'm just like
needlessly complex on the brother machines. Oddly, but still fairly simple.
On the note of getting just so fed up with something that you just make the fix, I finally made a full setup for making softjaws for our vise.
Yeah.
So I made softjaws to make softjaws. They're not really softjaws, but
they made jaws.
I made jaws for the vise to make more jaws. I thought it was going to take like 2 hours. It ended up taking me 8 hours. I am so happy it's done because basically...
So not quite changing units, but definitely multiply by 4.
Yeah, that was kind of brutal. Of course, I ran into stuff I wasn't expecting, hence not expecting it to take 8 hours, but I'm very happy with the result. It was one of those where I also experienced scope creep, where I was like, oh, I'm just going to make this jaw on this new way. And then I was like, oh, here's like a bunch of other stuff I've been meaning to change.
Yeah.
That means that they come off nicer for the operator. And so, but the big focus, so basically I have SMED softjaws, so it takes 3 minutes to change over to make softjaws. The big push for this is we're going to need to make a bunch of softjaws because some of our production softjaws I see some wear on, so they're going to need replacement. I really want them to be Kanban. So there's always a backup set. If we damage something, we just keep rolling.
The actual cut jaws.
Yeah.
Like pre-cut, ready to go.
I think I'm going to do that. And then the other thing is 8 hours, 8 hours is a lot, and it definitely threw off my day. But I think it was probably disrupting. It was probably about an hour to 2 hours to actually make a set of softjaws. Like not the blanks, but actually like it was very disruptive to production.
Back the old system,
like how did I have that set up? What was the stock size? Like none of it was documented. And so just by the time it was all like done, and then also it was using some custom tools that I had to like set up and load.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just by the time it all happens, it's like way longer than you're hoping it would be.
Yeah.
And so it was sort of delaying. I was finding myself hesitant to move into like aluminum for prototyping new buckles, and a big focus for us is releasing new products. Famously, even though we barely release new products. So hopefully this kind of is another step toward making that process a little bit faster.
Yep.
Yeah, so pretty excited about that.
Cool. One more of my annoyance motivated changes was I finally made a setup sheet template. As I said, I was making lots of omissions.
What did you have before?
I was just writing everyone out.
Gotcha.
And this was like a classic don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Right. I was kind of waiting for our new Airtable base to be ready before making...
What is your new Airtable base?
My friend's building out the new system.
Oh.
So I was kind of like, I don't want to go too far down this road until we get there. And then this week I was like, this is crazy. You're writing like, often I'll have kind of like 3 different parts, in different levels of progress. And I'm like getting things mixed up between the different parts and just forgetting to write down a detail. Mm-hmm. So I finally made a setup sheet template. Right now it's just like a copy and paste prompts for all the things. So it's like, I'll just read it to you. It's this
is what people tune into this podcast for. Is some nice readings, setup sheet templates.
Where did it go? This is really.
I mean, it's sort of funny. I feel like we've talked about this before, but there's such a selection bias in content in general, away from sort of in the weeds specifics.
Yeah. So it's just like machine, special job notes. Are the notes for the machine loading for the enclosure of machining or loading area if it's on the R450? Trunnion, yes or no. Pallet number, if applicable. Op1 origin. Op1 probe origin, if different. Op1 origin location. Op1 vise. Op1 jaws. Op1 spacing. Jaw spacing. Clamping direction. Stock orientation. Stock bias and vise. Part file. Any additional notes. Part flip. And then all the same stuff for Op2.
Basically. And so when you say this is copy paste, you copy and paste this whole thing into a document and then kind of fill it out.
And then just fill it out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I need to add something because I just got a text that I forgot to upload a file.
Oh.
So actually, I'm just going to have it open.
Interesting. I feel like this is a great example of don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, because it would be so easy. Like my immediate thought when you're like, I was thinking, it would be nice to do like a Google form where it's conditional formatting. So like, you will turn green once you've put in that info.
Yeah.
But then you don't do it. And this you did.
I did. It only took like 5 minutes.
And then also when your friend is like, hey, I built this new system. What are we doing for the template on this page? You'll be like, here it is. These are all the things I want in there.
Yeah, exactly.
And so like you've made a lot of progress.
Yeah, I felt real stupid for not having done it before, but now it's done.
Yeah. Most of these improvements, that's how I feel. I'm like,
Yeah.
I mean, the successful ones, right? They're typically fast, easy, inexpensive, and quite impactful.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, I've been doing this for 2 years now. The
Right.
other way.
I also
What
gave access to Uriel and Quorum, so if they keep seeing things that I forget, they can just go in and like put a prompt.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
My really dumb one from a while ago, which I talked about, but this strongly reminds me of it, is when I was telling Sam about how it would be nice if we put a computer over by the scale so I didn't have to like remember how much. And he's like, what if you just put the scale over by the computer? I was like, wow, brilliant. And I painted thousands of buckles the other way. Okay, so in terms of, which we talked about last episode, optimizing for learning, I got taller hardened jaw inserts for holding our Op1 stock, which the hope is that it is more accepting of, like, we've had issues with throwing parts due to burrs.
Yeah.
And so these little inserts, for people who aren't familiar, are basically little hardened pieces of steel that grip onto the bottom of our aluminum stock.
Yep.
And you're trying to hold as little stock as possible so that you don't waste a lot of aluminum just for holding the part while you do the machining, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. And so the old ones held on to 0.06 inches of stock. 60 thousandths of an inch. It's like half of an eighth of an inch. So, for people who are familiar with what an eighth looks like.
Also known as 1/16.
Yeah, a little under. And it's decent. It's not a ton of grip. If you have too much clamping pressure, it'll just shear off the bottom corner, I found. And that also means that if you have a burr that's like 20 thousandths, you've reduced your by 33%. Yeah. So it's just a little light. And then the other thing I was finding is that 60 thousandths of an inch, if you have a decent sized hat, like if you have, this is really in the weeds, but if you have a decent size stock relative to your part geometry, that's actually really thin in terms, like,
it's flexible.
It's so flexible.
Yeah.
And so you end up often cutting above that 60 thousandths anyway.
Just to maintain rigidity.
In that hat. And so we've had issues with throwing parts, but then also we just like to be able to get after a little faster, like just push the machine a little harder, and also not have as many issues with burrs. So we got in some taller jaws. These are 0.1.
Are they the same dimensions the other way? Are they still 1/2 by 3/4?
No, they are 3/4 by 3/4. Oh. Which caused me problems, which was part of why that project took 8 hours instead of 2 hours. I ran out of real estate, so I had to like reorient the part. Anyway, it was a whole thing, and then that caused problems I hadn't anticipated of drilling too far away from the face. Anyway, so I put those in the jaws for making our soft jaws, partly just because I wanted to integrate them and see what problems I had or how that affected things. The other thing is it's just a really big part.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to be holding on to a little bit more. I was always like a little bit, high pucker factor.
Yeah.
Machining those, holding on to 60 thousandths. Like when you have like an inch and a half of engagement to do like a nice facing pass, and you're like, man, my spindle is so close to that part, and if it moves, could wreck a spindle.
Yeah.
Potentially. So.
Yeah. I ordered 3 of those probe halos. I don't know if you've seen those online.
I have an embarrassing story about those. Not only have I seen them, I bought one, and it is sitting in my drawer for the past 6 months.
Oh no!
I was looking at it yesterday. I was like, if I crash my spindle, with this in my drawer.
Well, I mentioned a little while back we had that probe crash due to that weird macro issue.
Yep.
It happened again.
How's the probe?
Functional, but needing to be replaced, I think.
Okay. Same probe? At least?
Different probe.
Damn.
Yeah.
That sucks.
I thought we had the issue fixed, and there was like one scenario where it would, in CAM, where it would still happen. Caught it the first time and fixed it, and then actually like caught it again, sent the scenario to Phil, who's doing the post editing. He sent it back, and like literally I had it back but hadn't started using it yet, and I posted another program, didn't catch it, I wasn't proofing it, and so we crashed the probe.
Damn. And the probe halo would have saved it?
It was in protected move mode, so it would have saved it.
I have to say, that was one of those things when I saw it. I forget the guy who makes them.
I forget his actual name, but Old Boys Industries, I think.
Yeah. You're like, how is this not how they come?
Right.
That was. It's so simple.
Yeah.
It's very surprising.
Yeah. Anyway, so I felt like a real idiot, but and hopefully they won't be necessary now. But really cheap insurance.
Very cheap. Yeah, it's for listeners, the probe is like $6,000. You can get a rebuild cheaper, I think.
Yeah, a rebuild I know now. A rebuild for a Renault, I think, is around $1,200 or $1,500. A rebuild for a Bloom is like $2,700. Oh. So unfortunately I crashed and cracked the glass on the Bloom.
Oh, damn. And then these rings are
I got a 3-pack.
Oh.
For $110.
There you go.
Smashing value.
That is
literally
non-smashing value.
Go get them, everybody.
Yeah.
For anybody who's wondering, I actually haven't test fit it yet, but it appears that the metal like screw part of the stylus is the same diameter on the OMP40 Renault as the Bloom T52 or whatever it is. So I'll let people know if it doesn't work for some reason, but it should work across both.
Very nice.
Yeah.
To tie that back to lean principles for a second, this has to do with what's it called?
Error proofing?
Well, sort of. I was gonna say more like to move to like lower lead times, lower inventories. You need process availability. And if you crash your probe, it really messes up your production schedule. And so it is really important to start preemptively finding ways things could break, and just like solving those problems ahead of time. And even if they cost quite a bit of money, there's huge savings in knowing that when you show up to do something, it will work. I think of like process availability. I did some business trips in India, and the traffic is so bad that most people, meetings typically start 45 minutes late. And part of it is, I don't know, cultural, and the other part is like you might just sit in traffic for like an hour and a half to get somewhere. Like even if it's a whatever. Like I got out and walked 5 miles and it was faster.
Wow.
Yeah. I was like, this is, So, I mean, I ran, I guess. But anyway.
No one else was there when we got there. Can't be late.
But if you think about how much waste exists as a whole in that country,
yeah,
and not just that country, but like due to traffic and not knowing that you can reliably get in your car and arrive somewhere else every time, sort of the same amount of time, is huge. And similarly, I don't know, you can't alleviate that with $110 spend, unfortunately, but
yeah, but you can get issues, part of the way there. Oh, traffic issues for sure.
But yeah.
We have two different, this is in the weeds again, but we have two different types of probes in the shop now, which I'm a little, at the time it was kind of like, these ones are really nice, you should get this one. I was like, sure, I'll get that one. Now that we don't have cross compatibility between our machines, I'm a little like, like if it had broken and
you just walk over to the other machine and
pull the probe out, use it and put it back.
Yeah.
Which is not an option now because they have different receivers, the whole yada yada. So in the long run, I should have maybe been a little more forceful about maintaining consistency between machines.
Interesting.
Even though I think their hardware is really good and all that. But
Blum?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I have a Renishaw, I think.
Yeah, and at some point it's almost to the point of like have an extra probe in the drawer in case. That's expensive, but
it is expensive. I wonder about that.
When you get to the point where a machine is making multiple thousands of dollars a day, hopefully, or at least $1,000 a day, and how long it takes to get a new probe, like
how long does it take to get a new probe?
I think it depends on who you get it from.
Like if you get it overnighted?
Yeah, I think Renishaw is pretty quick. I think Bloom maybe not so much.
Interesting. I feel like this would be, we had the big machinist meetup in Seattle.
Yeah.
Maybe the machinists of the Pacific Northwest should have like
one
Renishaw and one Blum somewhere, and we just overnight it to whoever needs it and they pay for it.
That's a good idea, actually.
Right? We don't all need thousands of dollars tied up in extra parts that are like process critical.
Yeah, just pitch in $100 and you have access to
a whole bunch of
everything. Yeah, I like that. I will do that to anybody else who wants to jump in. Send us a message. You actually don't even have to be in the Northwest. You can overnight anything in the whole country pretty cheap. So,
that's true.
Yeah.
We just need a big collective for all our backup parts. We also need to start one, not anymore, but for the phase converters, for the capacitors.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That said, they're overnight them.
Cheap. Yeah.
Well, they're cheap and they
overnight them.
They overnight them and they have them in stock. Let's see. I sort of talked about this, but the thing about moving Kanban to relational database. So we've been making taking some steps at that, trying to make sure it's a smooth-ish. Trying to not do the thing, which I feel like we do, which is like, all right, we came up with a new idea. Let's full send.
Yeah.
Like the plan is to do it for like 5 Kanban and then let that sit for like a month and just see what the total experience is. Like something that gets reordered, we'll probably have one that's like externally ordered, 1 or 2, like a few different types of Kanban.
Yeah.
And just experiment with the full workflow.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, we sort of talked about that. This is a nice, very simple, low cost one. We have now, I wish it was sister tooling. I was thinking it's like stepsister tooling. We have set up tools outside of the machine that are identical so that if something gets dull or breaks or something, you change it out immediately, hit go, and then do the, necessarily tool change outside of the machine. The reason we did it originally was when Sam was just new in the shop, I went away and I was like, okay, these are the tools that sort of like are prone to wear or breaking. And he doesn't know how to set up tools in like a shrink fit tool setter or whatever. So I just had backup set up. We've done it now because it's way faster and we need the backup anyway in case you like really blow something up.
Yeah.
It would grind production to a halt. We've started becoming much more aware of like which things in the shop are really very mission critical. Like our, whatever it is, $190, $150 Rollo printer.
Yeah.
It's like we ship stuff every day and we have one of them in the shop. So I think I'm going to buy a second one.
Yeah.
And we're going to use it immediately for printing labels of a different size. And then we also have that redundancy, which will be nice.
Yeah.
But on those extra tools sitting outside of the machine, when I pulled one out, I wanted to keep the tag with it that tells you what tool it is. Mm-hmm. But I needed to indicate that it was not ready to go back in the machine.
Oh, yeah.
And so I added a red piece of tape to the back side of the label and a green piece of tape to the front side of the label. And so now if you pull one out of the machine, you can put the tag back on the bad one. Mm. You take the tag off of the new one that goes into the machine, and then the old one that comes out of the machine, you can put the tag on it, but flipped over so it shows red. So, you know. And then all the information is still with it of like what tool it is, what number it is, all that stuff. So you can go in the drawer and pull out the correct end mill and set it up with the correct stick out and all that.
Yeah.
Anyway, 5 minutes.
Simple.
Super simple. For the first one, I rewrote all the info on the back. So either way you could see it. But then I was like, I don't actually need that. I just need to indicate like this is not ready to go in the machine.
Yeah.
And then so it just has a piece of red tape on the back of the tag.
Yeah.
So that was a nice one. I was sort of trying to think of other places to apply that. This sort of gets back to like the flow of information and making sure information is captured. I've had a bunch of really notable, at this point, experiences coming back to the shop after being away for a few days, and we'll have like a 10-minute meeting like we normally do.
Yeah.
Which is very different than I've seen and have experienced of like, all right, let's talk for like 2 hours of all the information, like, oh, this thing broke and we need to figure that out. And this, but like Kanban and this thing, like they basically just take care of information flow.
Yeah.
And so when you walk back into a shop that is using Kanban, if you're the one who manages reordering, no one needs to be like, oh, hey, we need to reorder this, or, oh, hey, I have all these things that I think are low and we should, it's all captured. Anyway. So this is another step in that direction where like, I don't need to go talk to the machine operator to know the state of that tooling. I can walk up and be like, it's ready or it's not ready.
Yeah.
And really helps the shop operate effectively.
A couple other quick ones. We updated, due to our crash, the probe calibration routine, like descriptions and documentation in our SOPs tab with photos and language that was easily understandable for everybody.
Updated as in you already had it, but it wasn't that good, or update?
Like I had uploaded like just like the instructions from Yamazen.
I see.
They are pretty cryptic. So like I was like, Ariel, try and recalibrate that. And she was kind of like, I don't understand a bunch of this. So she took photos of like how to set up the gauge ring.
Cool.
How to use a gauge block to set the Z height. And then she wrote in some descriptions of like, this is what this actually means.
Interesting.
So that was pretty helpful.
Very cool.
Yeah. One other, well, I guess did you have more?
I have two more.
Well, hit me. We'll run through them.
Oh yeah. So, our friend Avi came out for a visit yesterday. He's working on these AI or whatever, machine learning, visual, like it's a camera that uses machine learning to do sort of like natural language questions. Yeah. So you can kind of query like, is this happening? And then connect it to something else. Yeah. And
it will tell you yes or no, theoretically.
Yeah. So he came out to kind of set some stuff up around the shop, and we're just going to see how it works. I was having trouble ahead of time thinking of applications for it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, whatever, like come on out, it'd be cool to see. We ended up with some very cool applications, and the setup was very quick.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. But it was fun to, I don't know. It felt like I had to change how I was thinking about them. So one of them is, it is a camera that is looking at where our parts get staged pre-paint. And it's sort of, are we ready to paint?
Yeah.
And so what we did is we asked, are there Kanban, are there parts on racks next to each Kanban card? Mm. That way, if we have empty racks there, then the answer is no.
Yeah.
And if we have no Kanban present, and let's think about it. There's a few states, but basically by saying, are the Kanban there and are there full parts? Oh, when we unload the oven, sometimes depending on staging and process, sometimes we have full racks there, but no Kanban. And so anyway, so now from downstairs, we will be able to tell if stuff's ready for paint, which is a conversation we have almost daily, Sam and I. It's like, hey, Sam, are we ready for paint? And he's like, oh, yeah, we're ready for paint. Meanwhile, if the light just turned red, it's going to be connected to an and-on light. Yeah. If the light turned red, I could just at a glance know yes or no.
This is the kind of thing I'm thinking about for like setups, where it's like, is all the stuff there for a setup? Right. It's a little harder to systematize maybe, but I don't know. I queried the crew as well. I was like, where do you think we could use this type of thing? Their immediate thoughts were like, is the chip bin overflowing behind the machine? Right. Or is the outfeed table on the saw at... Yeah. And I don't know if you could tie that back to the saw to pause it. Probably not. The saw's pretty stupid. But maybe. You might be able to just like figure something out. Yeah. Anyway, cool. We're going to keep discussing it and kind of see where we could plug it in, hopefully.
Some of the applications are really dumb, but I also think it's going to be quite useful. So I don't know how to think about that. Yeah. Totally. You know, you're like, oh, I could just use like a switch and then connect it, but I haven't. And this is so fast to set up. Yeah. So I don't know.
I had date and time of posting added to my post processor. Okay. I'm not sure. Maybe that might be native in yours or some others. But I have often run into this situation where I proof a program.
So it's a time. Yeah.
Go back, make an edit, it's upload
revision
it.
Control, basically.
Yeah. And I'm like, did that upload?
I have that too.
Yeah.
So that's a nice way of doing it, actually.
Yeah. So I have, because I found myself being like, writing in a note, like, I updated this at this date and this time with these changes. And I'm like, why am I writing this over and over again? Like, this can be automatic. So very small thing, but
that's very cool.
Hopefully impactful.
Yeah. That does sound impactful.
Yeah.
Even immediately for just time saving. Yeah. And then long-term like avoiding failures.
Yeah.
Nice. The last one for us is Sam added more barcodes to some Kanban of new products. On the back of the Kanban, we have barcodes that help us in the QC. When we're doing QC, you just scan the back and it tells you what part we did and what color it is. Mm-hmm. And then that populates. I forget if we talked about this. I feel like we did. But we transitioned our QC. We have a Google form and then a barcode scanning gun. Mm-hmm. And so you scan the Kanban and that inputs the data, like what part is it, what color, the date is auto captured, and then there's different questions, all of which are required. Mm-hmm. And then there's different scannable options on the wall. And so you literally just take the barcode gun and like go down the wall, inputting like, how many defects do we have due to this? 0. How many defects do we have due to this? Scan 1. How many? Mm-hmm. And you can just go all the way across. It's super fast. I don't know that it would be as useful for things like, inputting measurements. Like for QCing parts in dimensional sense, I think would be not as useful. But this is like a really nice way to do data capture. Yeah. I've found like transitioning from the mouse and keyboard back and forth is... Yeah. Time consuming, especially if you are doing stuff with your hands or your hands are dirty or whatever. So
yeah, cool. I like it. Last one for us was, so I wrote out that setup sheet template. Uh-huh. So in the past, I've often like embedded softjaw cutting information in that. Okay. This kind of made it clear that it should be its own thing. The softjaw operation is kind of its own thing. Okay. Prior, our Airtable operations were separated into like, you can have a sawing op, you can have a fixture op, you can have an op 1, an op 2, an op 3. We didn't have a discrete softjaw operation, so I was like, maybe we should just make this obvious, discrete. This is what it is.
That makes sense.
So yeah,
like do it for every job.
Do it for pretty much every job. It's like a 30-second change.
That's awesome.
And hopefully that will be helpful.
And what goes in there? That's just like
setup notes. In effect, cutting a soft jaw is another setup. Sometimes it's the same origin and stuff, but it is another setup, and it has its own file.
Right.
So basically, just be like
it's a part.
It's a part. Yeah,
in a part family.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was our stress-induced productive week.
Yeah, that last one sort of sounds like that thing of like if you try to standardize it, it sort of highlights the bad process you have.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this is
let's
rethink this.
We're doing this wrong.
Yeah. That's cool. It's always nice to have clarity on that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, we ran real long.
Oh, we really did. Wow, lots of improvements.
Oopsies.
Yeah. We have a Patreon.
Hit it up.
Link in the description. And an Instagram, Incremental CI. Please reach out. I had one last thing I wanted to mention. Henry Holsters had a comment about my slow and embarrassing bike tire leak that took me weeks and weeks to fix, and almost made me miss a ferry a couple times because I had to like pump it up. And so they call those ankle biters or something like that. Like problems that aren't a big problem, like it's not going to kill you, but it keeps just like disrupting things, and you can either work around it or sort of whatever, make a quick fix, but eventually you will have to go fix the thing.
Yeah,
and so
it's a great term.
Yeah, ankle biters. So thanks for that. You can find me at You can find me at austere_manufacturing on Instagram and austeremfg on the internet.
You can find me at lichen_MFG on Instagram and lichenprecision.com on the intranet.
Thanks all for listening.